Yeah, and if you put all of our rubber tires together, we can go here and to the moon and back again. So we produce a lot, and on a side note, that is also our biggest problem actually, because we use plastics, and plastics, as you know, is not so good. Although we're reusing reusable plastics, we're reusing bricks, and you can use bricks from 1962. You can still use those bricks and connect them to the ones you get today. So it's a durable business, and it's something that goes in heritage. But we have a huge problem and a huge challenge on the sustainability part. But that can be for another discussion. So I'm here to talk a little bit about the modernization journey that we've gone through, and how we try to improve on employee experience and try to get a little bit more consumer grade. And my title is very fluffy. It's HR Innovation Process Innovation Director. And basically, what I try to I'm being asked by my kids, so what is it actually that you are doing? Aside from just sitting across from the screen, I usually say that I'm a little brick that sits in the shoes of my colleagues, and when they walk around, sometimes it really hurts, and then they pick up this little brick, and sometimes they just throw it away. But sometimes they look at it, this is really nice and shiny, and it might fit with some of the other initiatives that we're actually building. Let's investigate a little bit further. So I'm bridging what is going on outside of Lego with some of the initiatives that we have internally, and trying to connect with startup companies, with professional services companies, with technology companies, and saying how can we actually improve on what we're doing. That's a really, really exciting company, or exciting job, but it's also a lot of emails, people wanting to pitch all sorts of ideas. I said a lot of no's, honestly. So if there are any suppliers in here, our budgets are done for this year, and next year we are already planning something. So not to discourage you, please go ahead. So just a little bit about Lego. So we were founded in 1932, about 100 years old. The name Lego comes from play well, or like God in Danish. We are number 3 on the most reputable brands by Brand Institute. We are present in 118 countries where we're selling our products. We have about 27,000 employees. I've been with Lego now for 3 years. We've grown from 18 to 27,000. So we are really expanding, and you can say COVID has treated us really well. We have really grown, and we're really thankful for that. But aside from that, it's really amazing. So we are present, as I said, in 118 countries where we are selling. Let's see if we can get this one here working. Yeah, headquartered in Denmark, in a really, really small town called Billund. It's known for its airport, it's known for Lego, it's known for Legoland. Then we're also present in London, in Enfield, in Connecticut, and Singapore and Shanghai, where we have major hubs for development of products and IT and so forth. Then we have 5 main factories in Denmark, Hungary, Czech Republic, in China, and in Mexico. And then we're opening up in 2 years' time, one in Vietnam and one in the US as well, simply because of the expanding demand. Physical sales offices, 37 places, and then we run a lot of Lego stores around the world. So if you travel, or if you go to any of the high streets in some of the major countries, you will see a lot of Lego stores around the world. This is really an expanding business for us. So if anyone comes and tells you that e-commerce is going to take over the world, yes and no. We can still have both working together, and we're doing that, but it's a different kind of experience when you go into a Lego shop. We're really trying to do something different on that. Anyway, enough about Lego and who we are. So a little bit about the context for what we're doing, and I'll take you back maybe a little bit too long, but back in 2004, 2005, if any of you remember, we had a huge crisis. We were losing billions of Danish kroner. And we were, I wouldn't say about to go bankrupt, because we are 4th generation family owned, and they have huge pockets. So we really don't go bankrupt, but we were really losing a lot of money. We were taking too long time developing new products, bringing them to markets, and we were really fat and bureaucratic. Then a new CEO came in, slashed a lot of this, made a huge turnaround, sold off a lot of things, maybe a little bit too much. But then we had 10 years of amazing growth, so double-digit growth for 10 years. That was really, really unprecedented at Lego. But then in 16, 17, top line growth started to slow down. And the CEO was replaced. He became promoted to chairman of the board. A new CEO came on board and said, we need to focus not so much on growth, we need to get a profit engine in and running. So we started off by laying off 1,500 people. Most of them, they came back the day after because they were being hired as external consultants, just at a much higher cost, unfortunately. But we tried to simplify our processes and really speed up things. And we actually did. So in terms of how we bring new products to market, we really speed up that. So every year we are introducing about 400 or 500 new SKUs, which is really truly amazing on this one. So really great, but it was a little bit of a tough period for the organization with the layoffs and the simplification. Then in 19, the new CEO said, we've had 10 years of huge growth. We have invested all of our money in relationships with Disney, with Warner Brothers, and all of that good stuff to get IPs and to really get new products into market. But we didn't invest in our infrastructure. So we didn't invest in processes, we didn't invest in new IT systems or new ways to go to market and so forth. So he decided we need to have a new focus. We need to really figure out what can we actually do about all of that. So that was the plan 22. And you can say it sounded a little bit like a blast from the past, looking at 3 or 4 or 5 year plans and so forth. But when you have a family that owns the business, we don't have the stock, we don't need to report on quarters and so forth, but we are able to really look at the long term. And that brings a lot of calm, a lot of stabilization on what we do. So it might be that all of our investments are not paying off the year 1, year 2, or year 3, but it's really the long term that they're looking for. And that is, you can say, the plan. And part of the plan was to invest a lot of money in HR and take out all of the old SAP on-premise. So we had some really, really old, I wouldn't say you have the green text on a black screen, but it was close to. Some really old SAP stuff that we had stitched and done all things about, and we could do it any way we'd liked. We wanted to go upgrade that, upgrade our processes, upgrade our operating model, and really create consumer-grade experience, you can say, or close to, for candidates, for employees, and for HR as well. So that was part of the plan that we did. And then end of 19, we signed a contract with Workday to establish that as our core HR platform. And then we have been in the trenches the past 2 years, going through COVID, trying to run a global project. We've had hundreds of people going and testing. And Lego is really a risk-averse company. So we have postponed the project maybe twice for a total of probably 6 or 8 months, simply because we wanted to test. Did we get our payroll right? Did we get our payroll right? Was the payroll right? Because at Lego, no one wants to have any errors in their payroll. We do have that, of course, but generally we don't want to accept any risks on that one. So in September, just 2 months from today, or 2 months earlier than today, we launched with Workday and this new consumer-grade experience. I'll tell you a little bit about that journey and what that actually entailed. So some of our key drivers was we had this rigid old HR system. We had crappy HR data. We were working in silos, and when the business came and asked us, so how many people are we? How much does it actually cost running HR? What can we actually do? We weren't able to provide the best answer because we didn't know. We didn't have correct data. We did a user survey from 1 to 100. And the best score was about 63, which is a little bit above poor. Not good, but a little bit above poor. The rest was really, really awful. So when our users evaluated our processes from recruitment, onboarding, all that, they said, you are really crappy. I actually had a sit-in. Our CEO does lunches from time to time with people. You can just sign up for it. And I had one with him in early 2020. And then he asked, so what are you doing? And I was saying, so I'm working on this HR project called Workday. And he said, oh, thank God. You can only surprise. It can only be better. I was like, okay. Then I knew the expectations were really low because they were really feeling the pain right now. So we could only surprise and only be better. So with that, we decided on, and I'm sorry for you kind of reading it really well, but we wanted to be leading HR expertise, simplify, look at end-to-end, drive costs down, efficiency up, and all of that good stuff, and be more insightful and supporting the strategic direction. And we had, you can say, 6 primary principles for designing things. And the reason why we had these principles is Lego is really a company that is consensus in decision making. It takes a lot of time. A lot of people needs to be involved, and everyone has a say, even though they are not directly responsible or accountable for the decisions. So we said not everyone can have their way. We are not creating something for everyone. We're not creating one-to-one replacement of what we had. We need to go global. We need to go standard as much as possible. So we said, this is one business. This is not 37 different countries. It has to be intuitive, very simple, trust, future fit, and then really focus on the employee experience. And what that meant was, let's try experimenting and putting the accountability with the leaders and with the employees for entering data, for actually controlling the processes themselves, and not really checking it until we do our contracts, let's say for the recruitment piece. That was wild because we had a lot of approval steps before that. Now we don't really have a lot of checks and balances, and right now we're really having a lot of problems because leaders don't know what to put in. So they choose the wrong reason codes, and that makes us a little bit tough in actually doing contracts at the end. So we are struggling a little bit now, we were live with that. Anyway, what we wanted to achieve really was a better experience for everyone, agility to actually scale. So when we are opening up in India or Southern America or in Africa or Middle East, we wanted to be able to scale and open up really fast. And we could do that only with a global system. We also wanted to take out some of the time from business partners and actually give them time to focus on the strategic stuff. We have an ambition with Workday as well as with transfer of more tasks to our shared services to actually try to free up to 25% of business partners' time, and then try to work on a more flexible allocation of this additional or extra capacity. We're still trying. We haven't quite cracked that yet, but that's where we want to go. And then basically it's like every other company, we want to have talent at the right place and so forth. So those were the ambitions we wanted to go with. And just this is really for the techie guys. We had more or less everything. So recruiting, onboarding, master data, pay, merit, learning, succession. So all of the stuff that you would normally call core processes is within Workday. We go live for all of our population, although we're doing a little bit a split. So right now we only live with our salaried employees. All our hourly are also in the system, but they don't have access to it. So next year in Q1, we are going to allow mobile access with private device. We're breaking up with security, and they are really concerned about that, but we are allowing employees to bring their own device and to utilize that to access Workday. It will be an option in the beginning because, as we just heard, Works Council, unions, and so forth, they have a lot to say, especially in Spain and France, to some extent also in Germany. You cannot ask employees to work outside of working hours, then you need to pay overtime and all of that good stuff. So right now, this is only an option. And then what we're trying to do is expanding the number of access points in our stores and in our factories, so that at some point we can say, now there is enough laptops available so you can access it, and then it becomes mandatory. So that's part of what we're doing. And one of the things that we really tried to do was try to create what we call personas, and you probably heard about that and know all of that in advance. But really trying to digest, so who are we actually making this for? So a little bit coming back to, so is it just looking into our own belly and pulling out all of the nice stuff from there, or are we actually trying to solve problems or grasp some of the opportunities that are out there? And we really wanted to at least try to not make it more complicated than what they had today. but try to see if we could make it more simple to access, easier, and so forth. And for that, we created a number of personas. So whenever we had design decisions in our process, we could always go back and say, so how does this work for an hourly employee in our production? How does this work for someone who works in our shared service center and does first line calls? How does this work for a manager and so forth? And this is just an example of what that looks like. And we try to collect all of the data that we had. So all of our nice annual surveys, exit surveys, onboarding surveys, and what else we could put. We try to collect all of that and really digest that so that it was not just fictitious data. It was not just personas that were invented. It was actually grounded in data. And we've had the same survey company helping us driving employee surveys and engagement surveys and so forth for the past 15 years. So we had quite a lot of data to actually digest and get into this. But one of the key challenges that we really had was, out of the 27,000 people that we are, about 15,000 of them are hourly. 10,000 in our production and about 5,000 in our retail stores. So that's a huge challenge for us, because all of the rest, all of the 10,000 that are left, they sit in front of a laptop more or less every day. So no huge problem in terms of access and so forth. And they're also IT literate. Then we work across 37 countries. And at that time when we started off, we also had Russia. We now pulled out of Russia. But Russia, Vietnam, India to some extent, and China, the data privacy rules and the laws and so forth, for those of you who work globally, this is a nightmare, right? So for China, we decided we risk accept. We've done something completely bold in Lego. We are actually accepting a risk of the government coming and say to us, you are not compliant with the law. Because we don't know how that law is gonna take effect yet. So we are running a risk, and then we will see what actually happens. But that was something that was really tough for us. There's also a lot of local demands, so a lot of paperwork, especially in some of our Eastern European countries that we're present in. A lot of things needs to be on paper. It needs to be in a file cabinet in the sales office, so authorities can come and actually audit us. And that, of course, is a little bit a problem to digitizing and creating nice user experience and so forth. That some of the requirements are really tough to get around. So we coexist with that as well, which is really a challenge. And then we approached this year and we started to say, so how do we actually come alive? Not as an HR operating model, saying what is it that HR should deliver, but more an operating model. How can we actually deliver Workday and still service our end users to the best way possible? And at the same time as we were almost about to go live, we also changed the way we organized. So IT went from hierarchical traditional organization into agile, into product ways of working. And we introduced product ways of working in 3 teams. So not only did we move, you can say, budgets. So budgets usually reside in the functions. So HR had the budget for this project. Now we moved that budget into IT, so everybody needed to go and apply for that budget if they needed any money for doing any changes. So that was one thing. Then we also separated and saying, so the business should not say what they need. They should say, we have a problem or we have an opportunity. Now you go fix. So they should try to distance themselves a little bit from saying what they want, and then actually leave it for the teams. And that's a huge challenge, I can say. But we run the normal, you can say, tier model. And what we did to try to get both our the business, HR, IT, and our shared services, to try to get them together around one common purpose and one common way of looking at development. We created what we called a one backlog. which basically consists of a number of things. So this is really to focus things in so that HR doesn't run off in one direction and says, I need to focus on a new rewards program. Shared services runs off and say, okay, we really have a problem with onboarding. We need to fix onboarding. And IT says, yeah, by the way, this little thingy down here doesn't really work. We need to replace that. So really trying to get all of the priorities into one bucket and then have a product manager trying to prioritize this. Of course, the product manager doesn't do this quite on their own. They, of course, work with the stakeholders, but really get all of the directions, all of the initiatives, all of the priorities into one bucket and then reprioritize and say what makes most sense. And it's, of course, we need to do all of the operational stuff, all of the bugs, all of the things. And we're just 2 months into this model. And right now, we started off with 200 issues in 5th of September. Today we've had 1,500 issues or things that we have worked on, so quite a lot with the team and with our shared services. About 2/3 of all of the things that we are working on are bugs or security stuff. People wanting access, people not being able to do what they're used to do, and how can we actually help them do what they used to do. Sometimes we need to say the role has changed, you can't do this anymore. But bugs, then we have some releases, we have some epics and continuous improvement. And then we try to create a model where we get our process improvement people together, we get our experience, so UXers really focusing on our end users, along with the technology people, trying to get everybody together and work in this independent working team. And that's a challenge, to be honest. It's really a challenge to get everyone gathered around this. It's really a challenge to prioritize and get things done, because not everyone is respecting the process. So sometimes people with 1, 2, or 3 stars on their shoulders, they come and say, Thomas, this needs fixing. And they don't want it fixed in the next sprint, they want it tomorrow. So we're still working on this. How can we get things done? How can we educate? And how can we help our colleagues in the business and everywhere else to really respect and understand what is our priorities right now? And when I come to them and say, guys, you want this little thing here, should we postpone our merit increase in October? Or should we postpone the launch of the factory so we cannot start recruiting from January? And then they start saying, okay, maybe the thing that I want is not as important. So it is really important, I think, to have those dialogues and to actually be really crisp on what are your priorities? What is that I'm being measured on when I'm leading this project and leading this team? And if people have something that is really important, I can of course bend and say, I understand. If we don't do this change, we will not be able to do payouts of our payroll in the UK next month. That's completely fine. We will then fix that. But the rest, it's really about challenging and turning back on that. So what is that we have learned, and what is that are really, you can say, I wouldn't say the stones on our way to delivering this. One thing is self-service or self-enablement. People try to come up with the most sexy words for managers having to do stuff themselves, right? To try to make it slide down a little bit more easy. But basically, we're asking leaders to do more of the HR stuff, more of the things that they have been able to delegate to their PAs or EAs or to HR. We're asking them now, you need to initiate a job transfer, or you need to initiate the recruitment. You need to figure out how many positions you actually need in your team and so forth, and actually put in the right data. That's a huge challenge, because our leaders have been really spoiled the past many years. And to be quite honest, we didn't prepare them enough for this change. So they're making mistakes, and we're learning, and we're trying to regroup and so forth. They're making mistakes, but they're not unwilling to do it, fortunately. So that's really good. So they are open to do it. They just weren't fully prepared for it. Then it's all about the operating model. I can't tell you how many meetings we had trying to get the different stakeholders aligned about this is one way of doing things, the trade-offs, and ultimately when people are really struggling and trying to figure out what to do, at some point it needs to go to the executive leadership team and say, what do you want to do? We have two opposing thoughts. What do you want to do? And then HR needs to fight it out with finance, because HR owns the operating model and the direction, but finance owns our shared service center. What should we do? How do we bend? It's not everything that we can solve with simple discussions and what's the pro, what's the con, what works best, what saves more time. At some point it's political, and it just needs to be elevated to the ones who can actually make the decision. And my only advice is, don't wait too long until elevating. Getting the facts on the table and say, okay, we disagree. Who can make a decision? None of us. Let's elevate. Let's elevate. Let's elevate until someone actually says, this is the way it goes. Then it's a lot about risk acceptance. And for us, this is really the tough one. The brand itself, I was told at some point that our owner family did not want to see the Lego brand name spread on newspaper front pages saying you're paying out wrong, or you're not paying out your employees because of an error. And that means really we are testing, and if necessary, delaying the project. That's simply because we had a really low affinity for risk. We really don't like risks, especially when it comes to pay. Then, as I said, it's about change. Change we did a piss poor job at. So we waited a really, really long time before we started engaging with leadership teams and actually showing them what this was all about. And then we did an approach of saying, okay, this is how you do things in Workday. This is how you do things in the system. But our leaders and employees, they missed the larger picture. So if I'm doing my little task, who's doing something next? Why isn't this done? I've done my part. Yes, but you forgot there is 3 more steps, and maybe they're not as fast as you. So this end-to-end view was not good. So we're doing, actually next week, we're doing an after-action review on this whole project, and change and communication and training is actually one of the things that is going to stand out as we can do better. Then, and this is really interesting, I had a lot of discussion on this recently, people and data. So with this new system, we're getting even more data. We're getting, I like data. I love data. I also love people. And the challenge for us really is, so with all these new systems and all of this AI and machine learning and so forth, is the system just gonna say, you are a poor performer, you've been a poor performer, you're out. And we say no. So data is there to inform us. Data is there to help start a dialogue between the leader and the employee. And what we need to do is ensure that the leaders, they can actually handle the data, they understand what the data shows and what to do about it in a respectful manner with the employees. And that's a huge part of it, of really dressing up leaders to understand what we can do and what we can't do with the data. We will not make a knee-jerk reaction based on data alone. We need the conversation. This is my last slide. So my key takeaways, and this is really key and has helped us along the way, all the way from the beginning. We had a really, really clear sponsorship from our CEO and the executive leadership team and our CHRO. So if we said, okay, we need to man up, or we need to do something else, or we need to have extra money, or whatever, they were there. And I've been in companies where that wasn't the case, but here we really had really clear sponsorships, and everybody's on board, and they're still on board. And you can say, actually, if we look at Skyline, so all of our VPs and SVPs and so forth, they're really happy about this. They love the system because they're not working in it day to day. So they see that and the feedback, this works, this looks nice, it's easy. And our CHRO just posted, I did my first absence request. Okay, yeah. But actually in our master data team, they have troubles making addendums because people have put in the wrong data, so they cannot make the contracts and legal documents. it's about perspective and really. But anyway, clear sponsorship. Then it's about accepting uncertainty. It is really about saying, okay, some things may change. When we started off in January 2020, COVID was something that was a flu in China. Then in February, it was something that happened in Italy. We started off running projects and workshops and so forth, and everything was face-to-face until March 11th. Everything closed down in Denmark and a lot of places in Europe and across the world. And we had to go from being face-to-face, designing processes using brown paper and stuff like that, to going completely virtual. That took probably about 3 months to adapt. Because the consultancy that we were hired in to help us doing this, not a bad word about them, but they just said, online, okay. So we just take this concept of 5 days in a row, 8 to 6, and do it online instead of doing face-to-face. And really fast, the entire team that we had, they were completely wasted. They were spending every single minute of the day that they were working in front of a screen, just looking and listening to presentations. Sometimes they had to do some exercises in Excel and so forth. We didn't know about mirror boards and all of that stuff at that time. That was tough. So it took us 3 months to learn and then pivot. So by the summer of 2020, we were a little bit getting into hang of online and how did we use, what could we actually do and so forth, and accepted a delay in the project. But it simply comes, and we just need to be aware that uncertainty is there. We just need to adapt. And then the last thing is really to pivot and to turn around. If you're going in one direction and all of a sudden you find out, okay, this is not the right direction. Stop, rethink, regroup, and find out where to go. Even if that costs you an additional month, even if it costs you half a year on your timeline. If you're going down the wrong path or you're going into problems that you cannot solve, stop and think, and maybe you need to regroup and do things differently. And don't be afraid of doing that. I think the most common mistake that I'm experiencing is that project teams are running. They know that there's a problem, but we have a deadline, we are running. And the day before, or maybe even on the day of the deadline, they will call and say, we are sorry, we cannot deliver today. And that for me is just not acceptable, because they don't know on the last day that they couldn't deliver. They knew probably a month, maybe 2 months before, and it's fine to come back and say, we have a huge problem. And unless you create that transparency and have not a failure culture, but have a culture that accepts that sometimes things fail, but we will redo things, then that doesn't work. And that has, if I can say one thing about the culture at LEGO, it is really accepting for experimentation and also for failure. So no one has ever been fired for making a mistake at the LEGO group. At least not the last 3 years. And that kind of culture is what we want. We want to encourage experimentation. We want to encourage people to actually take risks. And we will not fire people because they're taking a chance. If they do it twice, 3 times, maybe we start considering, okay, is this really the behavior that we want? But we want to encourage the experimentation. And that was basically all I had. Thank you.